And what up, you guys? Welcome back to Feral Publications YouTube channel. As always, it's me, Rich, your anti-fascist comic book nerd, curating comics for your enjoyment as well as empowerment. And today we're finally getting to chapter 4 of MAUS book 1. This chapter is entitled The Noose Titans. Bam. Chapter 5, The Noose Titans. And it begins ultimately with Art Spiegelman showing up a little late, showing up after dinner, and his father is still talking about money. He's like obsessed with money. He's obsessed with the way people use money, and this is kind of the longer narrative of like why and how all that money started to dwindle down and how they were only able to survive through money, and ultimately how certain factors and situations, like ultimately, like in this chapter you realize that his dad only survived as long as he did because of luck. So it begins with them having a meal as a family, and ultimately like they're still living kind of lavish compared to a lot of Jewish folks. They're not feeling the pains of ultimately what's happening to the Jewish community yet, right? They were more well off, and so they've been cushioned by their money, right? But it's starting to dwindle down, and the fellas kind of know and understand that, right? Here's when they start talking about how the Germans took over all the Jewish businesses, right? But he says right here, but isn't any money coming in? He's like, not a single zloty, and the family wants to live the way it did before the war. That's implausible, right? Before the war, they were, able to be agents of the free market and make moves and make money as they saw fit and trade and, do what they could. And now you couldn't really. But this chapter basically begins with Vlad, Art Spiegelman's father, making like backdoor deals and trying to figure out money of some way, somehow. And basically all the threats that were posed to him, right? Like there was ultimately like multiple occasions where he could have got killed or arrested or sent to the camps. And one of the things right here that they talk about, how they were hiding nice things, and they had a nice furniture set and they had a nice decor, right? This was an affluent family, so they had nice things, and so they had to hide it. And so they hid it with their Polish neighbor who was friendly to them. And what ends up happening is that they realized, well, we're not using it, we're saving it for a time when we can use it, not knowing if that time will come. And so one of his friends tells him, I bet you we could sell it to a German person. And he's like, all right. And so they sell it, and then must have been like a gut punch, right? He says, you cheated us last time, Jew. Wait, I haven't been paid yet. He's like, please, if you want to stay alive, go back inside. He was so unhappy after. So unhappy, right? He lost all this stuff that like he had hoped to just like keep. But then comes the story of like the luck that his father survives. Like they're literally rounding up a bunch of Jewish folks and like beating them and shooting them, and he gets stuck. He doesn't know what to do, right? He's like, and then from afar I see Izlesky walking, so I went hasty over to him. Hey, oh, Mr. Spiegelman, what are you doing here? Don't you see what's going on? Quick, come upstairs with me until the trains leave. Izlesky lived in a very fancy house. He was the only Jew there. So I sat with him and his wife for a good few hours. We heard shooting and screams. He survived my life that time. This part right here is a gut punch. I teared up when I read this last night. It's like Izlesky had a son the same age like Richiv. If you only could see how those children played together. Listen, Vladek, we can't know what's going to happen to us, but we must keep our children safe. I have a good friend, a Pole, who's willing to hide my son until the situation gets better. I think he'd take your boy too. Yes, you may be right. Let me speak with my family. But I'm telling you, it was something terrible going on in our house when I even mentioned it. What? Have you gone crazy? How can you even think of giving Richiv up to complete strangers? I'll never give up my baby. Never. Izlesky and his wife didn't come out from that war, but his son remained alive. Ours did not. And anyway, we had to give Richiv to hide a year later. It gets me every time, you guys. That's just fucked up. hella fucked up. Gets me every time. But it just continuously gets worse, right? People that are doing backdoor deals, they're getting gaffled up by the Gestapos, they're getting hung. They start moving them into ghettos. The situation just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's the problem with, I think, the psyche for most people, is that like we think we can just endure, right? But like I've learned in my life is that like as soon as someone infringes upon your liberty, as soon as someone disrespects you, like you need to defend yourself, and like defend yourself aggressively, because if not, you've become an easy target kind of thing. So as things get worse, they're moved into the ghettos, they're killing Jews and like using fear tactics, leaving them hanging for a week. And ultimately, they're still trying to figure out ways of making money to stay alive, because, you know, still to this day, you need money to stay alive. This part right here is so chilling as well. This is like, as the chapter, you know, emphasizes, right, the noose tightens around their neck, like the stakes have gone up and people are dying now. And this is horrible. They basically send out a notice, a fake propaganda piece as well, because they say they made it look like a convalescent home. But this family wants to stay together. They're like, we're stronger together. We don't want to separate. We don't give a fuck if it might be better for us, but like we need to be here with you, because what if it gets worse for you? Love the grandparents for that, right? And what ends up happening is like they start hiding the grandparents, right? So as you can see here, they're like, this is the storage shed, the false wall, the grandparents. But what ends up happening is that they've created this Jewish police force that's working in conjunction with the Germans. And so they're trying to figure out and round up any Jews that are missing. And they say some Jews thought in this way: if they gave to the Germans a few Jews, they could save the rest. And at least they could save themselves. The Jewish police force starts rounding up people that are absconding from this convalescent home that the Germans are saying is going to be a sanctuary. So eventually they take the father and they basically threaten the father. They say, if they don't leave, we're going to start taking all of them one by one. And so then the father sends a note. He wrote that we had to give over the grandparents. Even if they took only him away now, next they would grab his wife and then the rest of the family. So what happened? What happened? We had to deliver them. And so the grandparents go to Auschwitz, right? And so Art Spiegelman asks them, like, did you guys know they were gassing people? He's like, no, we didn't know at the time. We knew after they went and they got gassed. So after that, they have this big thing that they want all Jewish people to go to the stadium so that they can figure out who can do what and who's who, and like to give them a stamp and a passport and paperwork that will allow them to, ultimately the way they sell it is to allow them to kind of just live their life. And so many Jews don't trust them, they don't believe them, but they don't know what else they could do, right? They go and they're screwed, or they don't go and they're screwed. And it's literally how he says it, right? To go, it was no good, but not to go, it was also no good. And this part really messes me up too, right? Because the father shows up to see Vlad and ultimately talks to him and says, hey, I don't know what I should do. Should I go? What do you think? You're my boy, you're my son, and I need your guidance. Like, what do you think I should do? And Vlad tells him, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't even know what I should do. But the day comes, and the father's been staying with Vlad's sister until they go to the stadium to get basically their paperwork situated, right? And obviously that's not what they went there for, and that's not what occurred. So it's like when we were everybody inside, Gestapo with machine guns surrounded the stadium. Then was a selection with people sent either to the left, either to the right. Me and Anja came to the table where my cousin was sitting. We were so happy we came through, but we worried now. Were our family safe? I couldn't see anywhere my father. But later someone who saw him told me he came through the same cousin over to the good side. Spiegelman to the right. Then came Fela to register. That's Vladek's sister. Her they sent to the left. 4 children was too many. Fela, My daughter, how can she manage alone with 4 children to take care of? And what do you think? He sneaked onto the bad side. And those on the bad side never came any more home. Those with a stamp were let to go home, but there were very few Jews now left in Sosnowiec. 1 from 3 they kept at the stadium. Maybe 10,000 people, and with them, my father. Well, it's enough for today. Yes, Artie? And that's it. And so then Art Spiegelman's going home. He talks to Vlad's wife, and she corroborates the story, and she talks about like her family situation, about how they had to hide the mother in one of the trains, and ultimately the mother still ended up dying, but like at least, you know, they had that few more moments with her. So man, that chapter really fucked me up, man. I can't imagine being a parent losing a child, and like how that decision will haunt you forever. Like, there's a reason why Vlad told that story to Art Spiegelman, is because years later he thought, had I only done what my gut had told me, my son would have survived. And like, that's a horrible burden to like carry on your shoulders. And going back to that thing of like money and things, and like in the ending of the chapter, you realize that the father's kind of a hoarder. He hoards things, and that comes from, again, from like scarcity, right? From a poverty mindset of like, I never know when I'll have these things again, right? And if things get really bad, I'll have these things to trade and to sell, you know? And it's just it was a very emotional chapter for me, man. Like, I was reading that shit and I couldn't just, it hits hard, man. And even like that panel again that like I highlighted, right? Some Jews thought in this way: if they gave to the Germans a few Jews, they could save the rest, and at least they could save themselves. And like, for me, that direct correlation is like, you know, when people are supporting this shit, right? I sometimes wonder, like, do you really support this, or is it a facade? Is it because you're not strong enough or bold enough to be like, fuck no, I don't agree with this shit? Because I walk around with an aura of like, fuck this system and fuck these people. And like, trust me, like, as much confrontation as I might get online, I get even more in my day-to-day life. And like, that's alright, because I'm strong enough to bear that. And sometimes I wonder, you know, it's obviously born from fear for some people. Don't get me wrong, that some people internalize it, they actually adopt and they believe it. But some of it, I don't think people believe. And I think that it's because of mob mentality, and it's because, you know, they're weaker or more cowardly, and so they can't seem to, you know, rock the boat. And so they just fucking fall in line with whatever people are saying around them. And like, you know, they're all trying to survive. I never like to judge people who are trying to survive. So we got 2 more chapters to finish book 1. After book 1, we might read something just not so dark and heavy, but we might also get into book 2 of MAUS. I'm not sure yet what's going to be the next reading. Put it in the comments if you guys have any suggestions. Is this too heavy? Do we want to take a break from MAUS? Book 1, like I said, has 2 more chapters, and we're going to get into chapter 5 tomorrow. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and I do this shit daily, so I'll be back tomorrow. Lates.